Hi everyone, and welcome to the Business Forum Group webinar on why your company needs to embrace small data. Today's webinar is co-organized by the Oslo Business Forum and the Nordic Business Forum. And for those of you who may wonder who I am, my name is Negassi, and I'm Vice President, People and Culture at Discovery Networks. And I'm delighted to be the host of this webinar today. Now, the Business Forum Group are running these sets of webinars in the lead up to the flagship events in September. And that's the Nordic Business Forum in Helsinki, Finland, and the Oslo Business Forum in Oslo, Norway. And we're so excited that these sessions are finally going to be physical. But until then, we look forward to producing these sets of series with focus on business and leadership. And today's focus is culture and how you as a leader can create a sustainable organization. But before we get started, let's have a look at today's agenda. In the first session, we're going to meet Jonas Höfde. Jonas has been Managing Director of Devoteam Fornebu Consulting and implemented its strategy and development for the last 10 years. Jonas will share findings and learnings on why a lot of teams may be failing with their digital transformation. So how do you become a facilitator for change, which is crucial for adapting in the upcoming era? You'll find out soon. Secondly, we're going to hear from Lindstrom, the acclaimed author and expert within culture transformation. He will dig into how the concept of small data has been instrumental in the turnaround success of numerous companies and explains why you should embrace it in yours. Finally, we're also going to have some time to reflect and find out how we can actually put these into practice. In other words, great content to look forward to. Now, today's session is live, which gives us the opportunity to interact. And during Martin's session, you will also have the opportunity to ask him questions. And we will be using Slido as a platform for that. And just as a little warm-up, I would like to ask you a question in Slido. And that question is, to what degree do you as a leader spend sufficient time with your customers? To what degree do you as a leader spend sufficient time with your customers? Now you can use Slido through the window next to the live stream, or you can use and scan the QR code that's on the screen. If you would like to share your thoughts, experience, or learnings from this session with your friends or your colleagues, make sure to use the hashtag OBForum and hashtag NBForum. And now let's have a look at the results. Great participation, and I can see a really interesting spread all the way from 1 until 5. So this will be really interesting to see how this connects with both Jonas and Martin's session. Thank you so much for participating. At the end of today, we hope that you will have learned the following. So why your employees should replace big data strategies in order to become more efficient, how it's possible to adapt a small data approach right away, and why you as a leader need to spend time with your consumers. And now let's get started with Jonas Höfde. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Winta. Yes, I'm asked to talk about one of my favorite themes, the key aspects of successful transformation. I will focus on the digital transformation, and the reason for that is that technology really is the strongest disruption force at the moment, hitting organizations, and it's also the intersecting force connecting all the other 10 forces of disruption. So what we can see in out there is that there is a tremendous investments in digital transformation. 84% asked about what they are doing with the investments are saying they are increasing or continue on a high level investments this year compared to last year. And unfortunately, the last 16 in what I can read out of this are the ones that has suffered from COVID and don't really have the means. They want to, but they don't have the means. So everybody is going in these directions. But what we can see of all those investments, 2/3 of them are actually failing to get the targets they are aiming for. And that leads us to the question, what are the formula for success? And to be one of the 1/3, how to do that? Before this seminar, I asked my colleagues in Devoteam, what in your opinion are the two most important criteria to be successful with your digital transformation? And I get an answer with actually 4 really strong success criteria. I hear that a clear and shared vision and strategy is crucial. I get the input that an active change management is very important. Things are going very fast, and you need to have a change culture in your organization. A committed and supportive leadership is also crucial to get things going in the organization. And finally, interacting with all of this, an outside-in agile approach and organization with a quick and responsive monitoring and taking actions on feedback is crucial. So when I take those results back and look at it, I really agree with the last webinar I joined at Business Forum, Oslo Business Forum, where Kostas Markides had a key learning point from that, at least for me, and that was knowing what to do is not the challenge, because this is I think no one is really taken by this, but the thing is to do it and to even to do it good and in a good way. That's the challenge. So when we are looking at this, we think there is also inspired by Kostas Markides a building blocks you need to have in place. First, you need to have some capabilities to be successful, and that is around a modern tech and data platform. Where you can build things on quick to the market and so on. You need to get your culture agile and your organization agile to really move with the changes and respond in a good way to that. You need this committed and supported leadership, and you need competence. On top of that, you can build a clear and good strategy and vision, answering why, what, how questions. And on top of that, you do the transformation initiatives and run them. So when having those building blocks in place, you can't rest, because everything is moving. So with those building blocks, you have started, and you can continue changing and learning on that. So get a good circle moving around this to continue learning and improve on all those levels. Develop the capabilities, develop the strategy, and adapt your transformation initiatives. So how can we do that in practice? How to get this wheel turning? How to meet the market with this? We all heard the answers: be agile, look outside in, fail fast, etc., etc. At one of the big organizations in Norway, NAV, the Labor and Welfare Organization, a very big entity in Norway, is a good example of how this can be done. They had a problem with getting health data from all doctors around Norway to work on and to help their customers getting out in work again and so on. And they really wanted to drive this as a learning and change process. So they started with an idea. They tested out in several ways the solution and started with a hypothesis. And did it together with customers, together with doctors, together with their users, and got very quick to a solution that also was tested. Does it work with our organization, and does it get us to the value we want? And as I said before, the doctors were spending a lot of time trying to report the right data to NAV. NAV spent a lot of time trying to understand the data and coming back, asking for more and understand it. The quality of the data in itself was low. And finally, the end users of NAV had a very bad experience. So this must be changed. So what was done? It was a very quick lean value tree process where the key people around knowing anything about this was involved. And it was a thumbs up there. We have a good hypothesis. We have tested it. It looks good. Then they went to MVP, which also was a thumbs up. Doctors used it. It worked. And finally, they just pushed the button. This will work, and invested in an agile team going on and really realize this part. And that was done in under a year, and it will result in 500 million NOK in savings and not at least improved service for users. So a small example, but big in Norway on how to interact with your customers and really get fast to a good solution. So that was, I think, a decent bridge over to Martin and how to address the small data. I really look forward to hear you speaking, Martin. So over to you.
Really interesting findings, Jonas. Thank you so much. And I look forward to asking you some questions later on in this webinar. Now, we didn't actually get enough time to have a look at the results from the Slido question that I posed earlier today. And in connection with what Jonas was talking about, the importance of leaning into your customers, your consumers, your stakeholders, let's have a look at the results again. So to what degree do you as a leader spend sufficient time with your customers? The average score, 3.1. But we can see that there is a spread all the way from 1 to 5. And so hopefully this session and the session coming up now with Martin is going to be valuable for everyone. So now it's time to move on to Martin Lindstrom's session, where we're going to learn why your company needs to embrace small data. And before we get started, let's have a look at an intro video.
As long as I have, you repeatedly catch sight of When you travel the world as much and for as long as I have, you repeatedly catch sight of just one topic. That's the human being. The fact is, we all believe we're truly distinct. The reality is that all 7 billion of us are all the same. I would say that there are between 500 and 1,000 distinct types of humans in the world. I'm one of them, and so are you. Clues are everywhere. The reality is that no one sees them. A clue could be as simple as a glance or a toothbrush. It could be a painting, a photograph, or how a family's shoes are arranged. Just as distinct as a drop of blood, a person's home is a true reflection of their spirit. It's not just what you see, it's how it's placed. Clue gathering is not linear. Some clues lead nowhere. Some clues are so small that even I don't notice them at first. I call these clues, these insights into people's lives, small data. I listen to what people like and what they don't like, what they need and what they really want. The pieces of the puzzle come together and create an entirely new picture. In the end, everything boils down to one simple thing: the consumer. And no matter how insignificant consumer observations may appear to be, I've learned that every single thing we do in life, consciously or unconsciously, reveals incredible insights about who we really are. I'm not a trained psychologist or a detective or a forensic investigator. I'm a compulsive collector of clues, an explorer of small data.
Now remember that this session is live and take the opportunity to ask questions. We're delighted to have you here, Martin Lindstrom. Welcome. How are you?
I'm fantastic, and you, Winter?
I'm doing good. It's an early start for you.
No, it's not too bad at all.
We're so delighted to have you here, and when you're ready, feel free to start.
Absolutely. Well, listen, first of all, thanks for your kind introduction. And to everyone out there, what a pleasure to spend time with you. You know what? I want to take you back in time to 2003, because that was the year where the Lego company had a huge challenge. What happened was that they'd been listening to all the big data, you know, those data which is all about correlations. And what they learned was that the instant gratification generation had arrived. The issue was that kids no longer had time to play with Lego. I mean, building a castle taking 6 or 7 hours, forget about it. They wanted to do it in a matter of half an hour. So Lego went into panic. They changed the size of those tiny bricks to gigantic building blocks, so you could build a castle in a matter of perhaps half an hour. And that was the Christmas of 2003, where there was a very bad announcement coming out of Lego. In fact, they were very close to go or file for bankruptcy. In fact, sales had gone down some 31%, and Lego really didn't know what to do. The issue was that they'd probably been listening a little bit too much to the wrong data. So a small outbreaker group at Lego decided to move in to homes of consumers, and they end up in a home of an 11-year-old German kid. And as the senior executives were sitting there on the couch of the kid's bedroom, one of the executives asked the kids one of these profound questions. What are you most proud of? And the kid pauses for a second and he points at a shelf where there's an old worn down pair of sneakers. And of course, the Lego team is completely perplexed. So why didn't he answer Sony or Nintendo PlayStation? No, an old worn down pair of smelly sneakers. So of course they ask him why. And the kid is answering, because that's the evidence I'm the number one skater in town. You see, if you're a really good skater, and I'm sure you would know this, you actually create a wear and tear on the side of the sole, and exactly that angle is the angle which for him was his trophy, his evidence. And this was the second where the Lego team had a eureka moment. And why was that? Well, because if a kid is willing to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours playing with Lego, fine-tuning a sole on a shoe, why wouldn't the kid spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours playing with Lego? So Lego went back to the drawing board. They, in fact, introduced the tiny bricks again. And not only that, they also introduced the Lego movie, which was the second highest grossing movie that year, putting Lego back on the map. But Lego also started to change the culture around one profound insight to get closer to and closer with the consumer. Did it work? I guess you could say it worked. In fact, if you compare Lego's performance today with any other toy company in the world, they're kind of doing fairly well. And in fact, during COVID-19, the numbers have just become stronger and stronger. I tend to say that if you want to study animals, don't go to the zoo, go to the Amazon. And by that, I really mean you cannot sit behind the screen, as a lot of people have done over the last 2 years, analyzing consumers through research reports. No, when Winter was just showing the Slido research, I doubt, in fact, that the data was correct. And I'll tell you why. We've just gone back to normal now, kind of semi-normal. How many of you guys and girls would have been filling out that form, really spend time with the consumer and the customer in their homes, observing them, living with them, and observing what their life is all about? This sounds crazy, I know, but let me just go back to a story from Sweden many years ago when I had the honor to spend time with this gentleman, Ingvar Kamprad. In fact, what happened was I was invited to his head office, and this guy, he actually was not there. So I asked him, where is he? Well, he's at his usual place, down at the cash register. Sure enough, there he was. Already back then, this old man was sitting there checking every customer out. I remember I asked him during the break, why do you do it? And he said to me, because I can then look every customer in the eyes and feel what they're thinking and see what they're feeling. This has made IKEA what it is today. This is the DNA of our company. Sadly, he passed away, as you know, but that DNA has still stuck to the company. And this is really my key message today. Don't be fooled. Sitting in front of the screen is not going to teach you about all this stuff which really is going on, because you cannot quantify love by numbers. In fact, you need to think about things in a slightly different way. So what is that different way? Well, typically when we work with this type of work, we actually work with insight first. It's to get the customer or the consumer inside and let that become the foundation. But it's not just a matter about statistics. It is to spend time with people to feel what they're feeling. That insight is then craving out a little piece which leads to the business. The business is going to be informed by the customer insight, and that again is going to dictate or perhaps wave in the culture of the organization. And by the way, in that little center you have there, the overlapping Venn diagram, that's where you'll find the purpose, which then can help us to basically recalibrate the organization. That is the loop which I think a lot of companies want to do, but very few companies are doing it. Over the last 15 years, I spent time in more than 3,000 consumer homes across more than 100 countries. Can you believe it? It's crazy. But it's not just me doing it. It's in fact every client I work with every day. I drag them into the reality. Because here's the issue. If you really want to transform an organization, you need to make sure that that feeling which Ingvar talked about or which Lego experienced, in fact, is going to be embedded into the culture. You see, in a naive world, we all talk about having a purpose first, and we want to have a vision, and we want to have all this good stuff. But the reality is that sometimes it's not really working well. Let me just give you an example. If you take a look at the diagram of how you build up organizations, you will see that the message typically is actually stopped halfway through the system. The culture is basically just stopping. And that is where we have a problem. So here's the key insight. The key insight for you is that you have to exchange empathy by using small data. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of another person and feel what that person is feeling. And if you really do that, doing that, then you certainly can feel the pain. Here's an example of that. This is Best Buy in the United States. In fact, they could not understand why customer sales continue to decline until the CCTV video was proving that there was something wrong. Now remember one thing, what you're looking at right now is real. No report picks up on this. Nothing picks up on this, except when you start to observe. And what's even more interesting about this is there's only 3 respondents in that frame at the moment. And by the way, the board of Best Buy later on had a chance to review this video, and they immediately changed the entire setup of the store. And yes, it certainly turned around Best Buy. What's really fascinating is that some years ago, I had time to spend time with the founder of Inditex. Inditex, you probably know from Zara, for example. And I would say when you go into the headquarters of Inditex in Spain, it is probably one of the most sophisticated retail systems I've ever seen in my life. It's like going into NASA. It's all about data, big data. But there's something surprising going on behind those doors, which I had no idea about. And that surprising thing comes through this quote. As the chairman once said, our sales associate call the store managers every day to check in and hear what the customers are telling them. Our data is not enough. We need to feel the reality. That is the reason why Inditex is so successful. Because one of the things they realized is that if you take a look at our brain and how we behave, only 15% of what we do every day is rational. 85% is irrational. Now, you may not believe in what I'm saying here right now, but think about this. Have you ever touched wood? You know, knocking on wood? Does it work? Or what about this one here? How many of you have tried that you're watching television and the remote control you're using is flat for battery, so you press extra hard to squeeze the last drop of battery out of the remote control? You tried it, right? You know what I mean. Is it rational or is it irrational? Well, the reality is when we've done our neuroscience work across the world, we learned that 85% of what we do every day is deeply irrational. And this is where the big data comes into a conflict, because it's deeply rational. A good example of that is some years ago, and I'm sure you remember this case. Google, in fact, wanted to do an experiment because they realized that you, in effect, can predict a flu outbreak way ahead of when it takes place, just based on what people are typing into the search algorithm. So Google went ahead, typed in all the data, and they realized that 4 or 5 days before, they could basically inform all the doctors and professors that that was a likely flu outbreak going to take place. People loved it. Of course, everyone loved it, except there was just one little problem. Approximately 2 years later, the Center for Disease Control in the United States analyzed the real data, the true data. Was this correct or not? And they realized that Google were completely wrong. In fact, Google cared about the correlation rather than the causation. But what they should have done is really to go the opposite way. They should have cared about the causation, the reason why, rather than the correlation. So if you start with the causation, the reason why, that's where you create your hypothesis. Then you can correlate that using big data. And this is the biggest mistake I think most companies are doing right now. They have a big data strategy for sure, but it's based on hypotheses which quite often are extremely thin. In fact, classic big data analysis can conclude that the more umbrella you sell, the more it rains. That is big data. Small data is what I define as seemingly insignificant behavioral observations that point towards one or more unmet customer or consumer needs. It is those insignificant things. And I'm not saying it's either or. In fact, what I would claim is that it takes two to tango. Yes, big and small data combined actually are doing the trick when we look at all the research studies coming out right now. Let me just give you an example. So a couple of years ago, Swiss International Airlines reached out to us. They wanted us to reposition Swiss as the economy class. And Swiss, as you know, is a very successful airline company. But if you were to ask them using big data, just quantitative research studies, about what would you like to change on board on a plane, I'm pretty sure I can predict what they would be saying. In fact, what would happen is that they will go through a linear process if you follow the classic way of doing research. On the left, you have what the customer says, and on the right, you have what the customers feel. And what we're so obsessed about today is, of course, what customers say. We believe that the 15% is the entire truth, but it's not. That's the rational part. In fact, what we want to do is to push it as much as we can to the emotional resolution, which is almost like in the opposite spectrum. Why is that so important? Well, because the beauty of small data is that it represents the gap between being in balance and out of balance, which represents the opportunity for a brand. It is when we have that sense of insecurity. I feel overweight. Well, there's a Weight Watchers product for that. I feel alone. Well, there's Match.com. I feel, I want to have more credibility. I buy Rolex. All these insecurities are represented in that gap. And that is the gap we started to look into as we started to spend time with passengers across the world. Let me just share a little video with you. It's 3 minutes long, but it gives you a sense of what is going on behind the scene as we slowly was turned around. Let me play the video here. Everyone else, same prices. We are becoming a commodity. We're now starting to look like everyone else. Same prices, same seats, same catering. Why should I pay more?
If we want it better for us as well as for the passenger, we have to change some stuff.
How are you feeling?
Really feeling a little bit nervous because I don't know what's going on today.
I don't usually see Swiss come up too often.
The purpose of this project is to infuse the Swissness back to Swiss, to get people out of the chicken cage and make very courageous decisions which I never made before.
I do hope that we really found something that the whole world is going to talk about it.
To build a culture.
We need change to bring Swiss back in the game.
But this is not an idea developed by the office people. It's in partnership, and we've never seen that before, where passion is leading it, and where we unlock hospitality, which is the key of this company.
I like this exchange of teams, with the flying personnel and me being on the ground.
How would you describe today?
Challenging.
It's absolutely great to feel this huge energy and also creativity.
People should spread the news within the company.
This is going to be the start of a movement for us working together in a way we've never done before.
I'm a strong promoter of Swissness because I'm deeply convinced that we have to strengthen our brand.
We were all overwhelmed of the ideas and the creativity in all the teams.
It was so impressive to see the result of what you guys all did and people on the ground together and just to feel the spirit. One of the winners is
anxiety. Second team who makes it to the next round is
hospitality.
Really keen to see what will be next.
So what happened then? Well, listen, if you are going to do conventional research, remember that's where you do the quantitative stuff. Well, really, you have passengers what they want more of. They'll say more leg rooms, lower prices, better catering. I'm sure if you come up with those conclusions, you'll be fired in a spot. But if you push it even more, what is it really? Well, what we discovered was anxiety is the key. In fact, we want to remove the black boxes of anxiety. Think about it. Anxiety. Can I fly? COVID-19. No. Will there be restrictions when I come to the airport? How many of you have tried that now when you start to fly again? By the way, will I obtain some sort of ugly virus when I'm sitting on the aircraft? And by the way, will it land on time for my meeting with something happening in the air? I'm sitting next to a screaming baby. All these points suddenly showed to be much more valuable than the leg room and the catering food. So what we did was to go back and say, how can we use that little piece of small data and wave it into the narrative? We started to analyze all the different anxiety points defining a flight journey. And then we came up with a very simple idea. Remember, when you're on the aircraft, just before you land, you are anxious to know if you arrive on time. And that's where we started to change things. This is a true voice from Swiss. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just about to descend down to JF Kennedy's airport in 40 minutes. I have the pleasure to announce that we in fact will arrive on time and at gate 109, which may not sound like a big deal, but it is, because it only means that there is 7 minutes walk to immigration. And I've just been in contact with immigration authorities, which tells me that there's only a waiting time of 11 minutes right now. By the way, the luggage carousel managers are informing that there is a waiting time of 9 minutes. So with a bit of luck, you will be out on the other side in around half an hour. And by the way, I've been on Waze, the navigation service, which informs me that the average transportation time into Manhattan right now is 46 minutes. So with a bit of luck, you'll be back home in your comfort zone in about 2 hours from now on. I hope you enjoyed flying Swiss International Airlines. Be honest now. If you heard that voice up on the speakers, what would you think? You will think, these guys are on time. And what will happen is that we slowly remove the sense of anxiety. That has kickstarted a whole program at Swiss, which slowly has redirected the brand to become one of the leading brands in Europe. And it all began with small data. Because here's the issue. Branding is every touch point a client comes in contact with over the entire span of a company's existence. And the issue we have quite often is we think this is the deal. But if we go even further, and as you quote one of the competitors, Richard Branson, well, Richard Branson says, take care of your employees and they will take care of your customers. And that is really the second part. And that's the reason why it's so important to talk about branding as a holistic thing. Because when it comes to this, we need to wave the culture into the whole game as well. There's an old story saying that when JF Kennedy was going to the plant where they're building the rockets going up to the moon, placing a man on the moon back in the late 60s, he would actually stop at a random employee, in fact, in this case, a cleaner, and asked him, what is your role here? And the cleaner supposedly answered back, I'm here to put man on the moon. Do you remember when we previously talked about the overlap in the Venn diagram and it said purpose in the middle? That's what we're talking about. What has happened today with the great resignation around the world is that people have lost a sense of purpose. We don't have a purpose anymore. In particular, the younger generation, millennials, are losing it in a great deal right now. Why? Because what is worth now? Why should I go to work and become the same way as how my dad and mom are looking like? Gray in the face and gray hair. I don't want to work like a slave anymore. The concept of purpose is coming back big way. And that is really answering a very big challenge we've seen right now. Because what we've seen over the years is that when you don't have a purpose and it's not embedded into the organization, and in fact, when it comes to the point where the purpose is non-existing, well, then you lose your employees. That disconnect happens when you're not connected with the customers. And remember, connecting with the customer does not mean reading a report or watching videos. It means to get your hands dirty, to spend time in the offices or in the homes of your customers or consumers and feel what they are feeling. Why is that so important? Because it gives you a data point. And really, all these data points, the small data point, correlated and verified through the big data, suddenly creates a pattern. And that pattern is exactly where you want to place the purpose of your organization. So it truly lives the vision of your customers, or in Swiss case, the passengers, or in Lego case, the Lego fans. It aligns the business, or rather realigns the business, given the fact that COVID-19 fundamentally have changed companies and the consumer behavior, and it rebuilds the culture and adds a purpose to the whole thing. That's where the purpose lives. And the reason why I'm telling you that right now is because I think there's no point of return at the moment. In fact, the world has never gone this fast and will never go this slow again. But what also will happen is that probably there's no way back to work. I call it going forward to work. When you sit here right now, don't do business as usual anymore. Reset your organization, and do that by reconnecting with your customers or your consumers. You don't know what they're thinking out there. They've changed just as much as you have changed, but do you know where and what they've done differently? Let me just go back to Lego for a second. As Lego started to evolve the case, they developed a brand purpose to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. But it went even further. Because remember, what they discovered back in 2003, 2004, and 2005 was that it was all about storytelling to wave it in. So every touch point in the organization will adopt this type of mindset. The culture suddenly started to basically place it into the DNA. So what does it look like in reality? Let me just share a true consumer insight with you. In fact, this is a letter which was received by a consumer just recently. You know, when you are a kid and there's just one little bag of Lego bricks missing in that huge box and it's up to Christmas, kind of the whole world falls apart, right? You can imagine. Well, Lego realized that was the key to create amazing customer experience. In fact, there's millions of kids, 4 million people every year contact Lego asking about missing bricks. It's not Lego's fault, but it becomes their issue if they're not solving it. And here's an example of a classic feedback from Lego. Dear John, thank you for getting in touch with us, providing the information. I'm so sorry that you are missing bag 14 from your Moss Eisley Cantina. This must be the work of Lord Vader. Remember, this comes back to the narrative in that box. In fact, this very kid bought. Fear not, for I have hired hand to get the bag right out to you. Your order number is whatever and will be arriving in the next 7 to 10 days. All less than 12 pesos, which is the language from this narrative. Have a breakfastic day and may the force be with you. It's not just they're sending you a bag of bricks. They're sending you a whole narrative. In fact, this keeps the brand alive and is embedded into the entire organization. In fact, they call that freaky. Internally at Lego, freaky stands for 4 different dimensions. It's fun, reliable, knowledgeable, and engaging, which is the core direction Lego is using whenever they interact with the customers. And by the way, all of this, started with one small thing, small data. In fact, it's so prominent that today at Lego, they have what they call a director of writing and Lego tone of voice, which is Hannah Quill. That's her responsibility, along with the entire team of managing 4 million people, which every year is disappointed, not because of Lego, but because the entire story collapsed. This is my story. The story is very simple. The big data is all about correlation, and small data is all about causation. We can create a lot of correlations, but you need the foundation in order to create the real hypotheses. Because as I tend to say, data doesn't create meaning, we do. So let's bring that human side back again in business, now when we finally are resetting and going not forward, but backward, or rather into a next generation of how to develop brands and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin. Small data matters, and we're at the point of no return. Really thought-provoking. Thank you. And we will continue with you in just a few moments. So these topics that Martin covered are the top topics that every future-focused leader should understand and embrace. And Martin is not just with us for this webinar, he will also be one of the keynote speakers at the main events in September. And that's at both the Nordic Business Forum and at the Oslo Business Forum. And even if Martin is one of the world's best online speakers, there is a uniqueness to experiencing these in real life. And on that note, let's revisit some of our earlier events.
Business used to be tradition. Good morning.
It just feels like people care here.
We need business as unusual, and we need funky business.
The 44th President of the United States, Mr. Barack Obama.
Thank you. Very warm round of applause for Mr. David Cameron.
Thank you very much. Some of the best speakers in the world.
The purpose of business is not to maximize share of the value. Whoever told you that shouldn't.
It brings together so many people and creates this high energy environment.
We are social animals.
Powerful speakers, powerful audience.
I'll be back.
Now that is exactly what the Business Forum Group's events are about. It's an exciting experience, and we really hope to see you in September. And now let's jump into the moderated session and questions for you, Martin. There's been a lot of activity here. I can see likes, I can see questions and comments. The first question for you today is, when you use the words rational and irrational, what is the difference? Both are about avoiding pain, trouble, and trying to achieve gratification/pleasure. What do you think, Martin?
Winter, it's such a good question. And I think the best way for me to illustrate that is that most of the stuff we do every day, we're probably not aware of. We're not aware of it because you have to remember we receive so many billions of data points every day. And if we were to obtain all of it, we would collapse. Back in 2008, I conducted the largest neuroscience study in the world. We were scanning 2,000 consumers' brains using fMRI. And one of the things I wanted to discover was the impact of health warnings on cigarette packs. You know, in the old days and still today, we have these health warnings saying smoking kills. You kind of would get that message, right? Well, in fact, what the study shows, it was almost the opposite. In fact, when people are seeing the health warning of cigarette packs, they actually encourage people to smoke even more. So what we did was we went back to the drawing board and we worked with the health seizing contacts, all the different communities around the world, which are helping to stop smoking. And we developed the blank pack. The cigarette pack was completely white. Of course, we had the whole world against us. Why would you remove those health warnings? I mean, people won't get it if it's not telling them it's dangerous to smoke. But what we learned by doing that was that cigarette smoking went down dramatically. In fact, it's dropped 7% every year since we introduced the blank cigarette packs across the world. That is irrational. That is where you don't know why you're doing things, you just do it. You feel it's kind of an instinct. And remember, an instinct is an accumulation of experiences you've done through your whole year, your whole life. You don't know why, you just connect the dots subconsciously. Rational is where you're very aware of it. Yes, smoking kills. I should not smoke. But I mean, up to Christmas, I also know I shouldn't eat too much, and I still eat. So that is the definition. The definition is either you're aware or else you're not aware.
Thank you. And how can you create a proper process on collecting and organizing small data? An important question.
Yeah, well, listen, I think there's many different ways you can do it. First of all, I would recommend any company and every company out there to onboard new staff by spending time with the real customers. McDonald's have done it for many years. When you get your first job at the headquarters, you actually are farmed out to a real restaurant and you flip the burgers yourself. In fact, Charlie Bell, which was the former CEO and a good friend of mine of McDonald's, flipped burgers for almost a year before he actually went out and became the CEO some 19 years later. Nestle, we introduced a very simple idea at Nestle that every new staff member had to spend at least 2 days every year in a customer's home. I mean, that gives you a sense of how important it is. Here's my message. My message is, first of all, make sure when you onboard new staff that they actually live the mindset of your customer. We don't want people to bring their own culture from some other company into your culture, mix it into some blend thing. You want to make sure that the culture is defined by your customers. So this is one good start. The second thing is, don't start a project by looking at a report. Get your hands dirty. Send the entire team out and do it cross-functionally. You should have people from accounting, from compliance, from the whole shebang of all the different divisions. You come out and spend time in the customers' homes, on the customers' offices to feel what's going on there. This is not based on you asking questions about, do you like my product? It's about observing the issues and challenges. One example would be the work I've done for Maersk for many years when we went through the transformation process they've been going through over the last 4 years now. They were completely disconnected from the customers. And what we did was to take the thousands of staff into the offices and learn about the frictions, bring it back and redesign the organization around it. So that's a second very good way of doing it. And the third thing is to constantly check against your customers. Have a blank seat in your office where it says customer. And when you guys are in disagreement, look at the blank seat and ask yourself, what would the customer answer here? What would the answer be? And let that become the guiding light. Now, of course, a lot to say. I've written even a book about it, but I think in the end of the day, what I'm saying is get real. Don't look behind the screen. Go in front of the screen and embed yourself with reality, right?
Very good. So focus on culture and make sure you get out there and connect with the consumers. And remember that empty chair. I'll definitely remember that. And the last question for today is, what are your thoughts about quantifying the small data insights?
I think it's very simple. The way you quantify things is to break it down. I think it was Henry Ford. No, actually, it was Einstein once saying that nothing is too difficult if you break it down to small bite-sized steps. And in fact, Henry Ford said something similar later on. What I'm saying here is that when you work with small data strategies, you have to attach what I call a 90-day intervention on top of it. And let me just tell you that story in a simple way. Imagine the following story. There was actually an experiment done with chickens. Chickens were put into a cage and stuck in the cage for half a year. And one day the gates were open to the beautiful green grass and the sun was shining and the birds were singing and the chickens went out. And wonder, what do you think what's happening? They went straight back in again after 30 seconds. I call that the chicken cage syndrome. Now, here's the interesting thing. Now, Winter, I just want to bring you back on screen and I just want to ask you a question now, because imagine now,
sure.
I don't know if you can see your monitor right now, but if you take a look at my screen right now, I'm doing a drawing of 4 chicken cages, all seen from the top. And I'm going to be super nice. I'm going to open the gates to the beautiful green grass for these chickens. Now, I'd like you to place a piece of corn or some corn somewhere to get the chickens out of the cage. Where would you place that corn?
My first instinct is to put it right in the middle.
Oh, fantastic. So let's do that. See, here's what's happening. If you take a look at chicken A and chicken B, what is chicken A going to do? Chicken A is going to look at that corn and say, gee, this is really far away. My KPIs are not supporting it. And by the way, my crazy manager coming up with that idea of transforming my organization, what if he's fired? this is ridiculous. So chicken A will look at chicken B and say, what is chicken B doing it? Well, chicken B is not going to do a thing because chicken B is looking at chicken C and chicken C at chicken D. Everyone is looking at everyone and they're all concluding, do you know what? That's too far away. So what we've learned is instead of placing the corn in the middle, you place it just outside the cage. This is what I call a 90 days intervention. And the 90-day intervention is really the idea of breaking very big transformation processes down to small, bite-sized, instant gratifications. Now, those instant gratifications are typically linked with small data. It's a small tweak you're doing in the organization, which you learn from consumer insight, actually will have an impact. And that little tweak, you now start to say, does it work internally? Does it resonate? Once you can see if it resonates, you celebrate the hell out of it internally. Everyone gets energy. They say, wow, this is amazing. Then you try it one more time with a different flavor. And at that stage, you can see there's a trend. That's where you start to use the big data. So the small data is to prove a trend internally. It is to see a small change, which clearly can give some sort of revenue increase or customer happiness increase. For example, the NPS is going up, or it could be an ENPS, the employee net promoter score is going up. But you see a little improvement going on, but it will never be groundbreaking because that's where you have to roll it up, scale it up and all this stuff. So what I'm saying here is always attach small data with 90-day interventions, make it a culture project so people feel an ownership of it, send up this test balloon, see if it works, and then scale it up and grow it. And then you will see if the small data is right. And I have to tell you one thing, having done this so much that, do you know what? In almost all cases, they're right, because in the end of the day, the consumer is always right. And that's where we start with this approach, right?
Excellent example. And I won't forget that. Thank you so much.
No, you won't forget it, right? And when you and I meet up in Oslo and Helsinki, I'm going to test you one more time.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Martin, for being here with us. It was really thought-provoking. And we really look forward to seeing you in both Helsinki and in Oslo. Thank you. Our sketch note artist, Linda, has created a visualization of what we're going through today. Let's bring up the sketch so that we can have a look at it. Now, this is a great snapshot of the key points that were mentioned in both Jonas' session and Martin's session. So you can see small data, you can see love cannot be quantified by numbers, customer and feeling, a great snapshot and overview. And this will be shared with you in the summary article, and it will also be shared with you on social media. And now let's invite Jonas back for a conversation.
Thank you.
Hi, Jonas.
Hi.
What a great session.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Very inspiring.
So what's the key thing that you took away?
I took two things. First, the concept of small data in itself, and I think it's where we are now. 2 years with COVID, we really need to have this push and get out to the customers and talk to them, and not, as Martin says, sit behind our screens. That's one point, and the second one is the purpose. To use small data to build a purpose shared in your culture, in your organization. That's very inspiring.
I couldn't agree with you more. And how do you see Martin's input compared to what you and Devoteam have found?
I think it's when we talk about digital transformations, I think this is a very interesting topic with the small data. In digital, we tend to be very rational, and we want to quantify, and it's very close to use the big data part. But really tell our clients to use the small data to really talk, really understand what customer wants, what users want. That's very strong. So emphasis on that and have this conversation. Build the organization. Let everybody have a IKEA moment with their clients.
That's what we all want. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was the last question of the day, actually. And this concludes this live session. I would really appreciate it if you could rate this webinar. There will be a poll available. And then I'd just like to thank you, Jonas, for being here. Thank you, Martin, and thank all of you for tuning in today. Make sure to follow both the Oslo Business Forum and the Nordic Business Forum channels to keep up to date on the events that are upcoming. And then we look forward to seeing you in September. Take care.
Business used to be tradition.
Good morning.
It just feels like people care here.
Within business as unusual. And we need funky business.
The 44th President of the United States, Mr. Barack Obama.
Thank you. A very warm round of applause for Mr. David Cameron.
Thank you very much. Some of the best speakers in the world. The purpose of business is not to maximize shareholder value. Whoever told you that shouldn't.
It brings together so many people and creates this high energy environment.
We are social animals.
Powerful speakers, powerful audience.
I'll be back.